Welcome to Why I Left, a podcast that explores the Great Resignation. I'm your host, Brian Akar. Join me as I chronicle real stories from real people about the reasons they decided to leave their jobs during the pandemic and what has happened since. Hello, and thanks for tuning in to this episode of Why I Left. In today's episode, I chat with Abha Malpani-Naismith. Abha recently bid farewell to corporate to design a life that aligns with her values and aspirations. Now, her journey is a testament to the changing landscape of work and the possibilities that emerge when one embraces technology and creativity. Let's go check out her story. But before we do, don't forget to just subscribe, like, and rate the show. And also, please leave a review. Your feedback helps us continue bringing these inspiring stories. Thank you. All right, welcome back. So our guest today is Abha Malpani-Naismith. She's a digital PR and social media communication specialist, brand journalist, writer, and AI enthusiast based in Dubai. Now, with over 17 years of experience in PR, writing, and social media, Abha has recently taken this bold leap to craft a life that provides the flexibility she craved as a career-driven mother of two. Now, she believes in the power of the web and emerging tech to reshape the way we work and live. And she's currently freelancing and building a community of working moms through her newsletter. And she's even launched her first online course teaching people how to create children's books using AI. So her journey is not just a personal quest for flexibility, but a mission to inspire others, especially working moms, to really believe in the possibility of designing a life that blends not only career aspirations, but also parenthood. So Abha, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Really good. Thank you for having me. Really excited to be on your show.
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad we connected. And, before I always like to tell folks, how I end up meeting people. And so we ended up meeting. Tell the folks how we met initially.
So I just found you. I'm a newsletter nerd. So I read a lot of newsletters. And one of the newsletters I read, you had actually interviewed her for your podcast. And because the name of it resonated with me, because I often ask myself the question of why I left my own company, I thought, this would be a perfect podcast for me to be on. And then I checked it out and I pitched you my first ever time. I've never pitched anyone a podcast before. And I was lucky, and you said, and you got my email, and you brought me on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Super random. Yeah.
Very, very random, but it's one of the things that I love. It's that the algorithm does show me some love on occasion, so I appreciate that. And that guest, she was actually I forget the episode number. I believe it was probably 57 or so. But it was Anna Burgess-Yang who came on the program, and she spoke, and so that was another great conversation. So thank you for finding me, and let's just say thank you to the algorithm for bringing us together. So I much appreciate it. So before we talk a little bit about your career transition, would love for you to first tell us how do you define your passions and or your purpose in some of the work that you do?
This is a really good question, because I feel like as women, especially, we are multi-passionate. And that's been me for a long, long time. So throughout my career, I've done many, many, many different things. And I have found myself equally passionate about everything. So it's been a real challenge for me to choose what I pursue, which is why I'm still in the process of actually defining my purpose. Because sometimes when you're so passionate about so many different things, it becomes hard to narrow in. But what I'm very passionate about at the moment, and I think passion changes depending on the time of life you're in, like the period of your life you're in. And right now, as a mom of two who's recently left her job, and I'm in early 40s, and I look at life very differently. My current passion is really, how can I design my life in a way that I can be fulfilled in my career, while still being the best mom possible. So I want to continue growing in my career. I want to continue my personal and professional growth, but I also want to not miss out on my children's childhood. So everything I'm doing is driving towards that. And I'm really passionate about trying to achieve this kind of lifestyle without having to worry about income, without having to worry about getting back into a 9 to 5, without worrying. So at the moment, all my efforts are very much focused on that mission. And what I hope is from that is that I lead with by example, and maybe other women or moms who are in the same position, maybe they get the encouragement to do what I'm doing, because hopefully they will see me succeeding in it.
No, that's
So
great to
my
hear.
yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at the moment.
No, I like that. And there are a lot of people who are really searching for that lifestyle design. So I'm glad that you not only mentioned that you're too looking for that, but also too that it's a process, right? It's a process that we're going through. We don't just figure it out right away, but there's this evolution as we continue to move forward. So I appreciate you mentioning that. And now prior to kind of launching your own company, tell us about, your work journey and some of the environments in which you've been successful.
So I started working straight out of university, and I started working in advertising. And then I quickly realized that advertising wasn't for me. But all I knew was that I really liked to write. So then I moved to public relations, and I ended up working in public relations and communications for a good 5 years of my life. And I grew really fast. So I was one of those who was lucky to just pick up things really fast. And I was put into a team which allowed me to grow really quickly. But that also led to complete burnout. And I was 26 years old, flying high in my career, but absolutely burnt out. So I actually took a sabbatical for 6 months back then. I wanted to travel, I wanted to learn Spanish, I wanted to dance. I'm a salsa and tango dancer. So I just wanted to do that for a while. And that 6 months turned into 3.5 years. I moved to Spain, I learned Spanish, I danced my heart out, I traveled, I became a travel writer for 3.5 years, and then I got the career itch again. Also living in Spain, I had visa issues, and I just wanted to, and my income wasn't very stable, and I think I missed having a stable income, and I was tired of living like a student. So then I got the career itch again, and I moved back to Dubai, and I headed up the PR firm I used to work for before. I headed up their digital department, and this is 2008, 2009, when social media and the digital space were just mushrooming, and it was just, it was the wave at the time. So because I had been travel writing online, I was a professional blogger. I was doing a lot of social media in my travel writing. I probably knew enough, more than the others. So it was enough for me to launch a department. Then I went back to PR, same company, different role, and launched their digital department. Worked there again for 5.5 years, but I ended up in the same situation where I was burnt out, didn't have a life, and I realized that this is not sustainable. I love my job, I love what I do, but I don't have a life, and I wanted to meet someone, I wanted to get married, I wanted to have kids. So then but I had bought an apartment, so I had a loan, so I couldn't just quit everything again and move on. So luckily, I got an opportunity with one of my clients I used to work with. They were looking for a social media digital communications person, and the great thing about them was they were semi-government, so the hours were better. And I was the client. I was not a service provider. I was an agency, so I could really manage my own time a bit better. And then I moved there. I planned to be there for 5, 6 years, but I stayed 10. I did really well. I had a department, and I was really enjoying my work. I met my husband. I got married. I had 2 kids. And then I started to get the itch again. And then also I had hit a ceiling in my organization. But the great thing about the job was it was super flexible. However, a few changes happened, and then I lost that flexibility, which is when I realized that I need to move on. Now, when I was starting to get a little, I wouldn't say bored, but when you're in the same job for a long time, it starts to get a
Oh
bit
yeah.
monotonous. So
Oh
I
yeah.
started building side projects to keep me intellectually stimulated, because the hours were too good for me to quit my job. And it allowed me to be in the workforce, it gave me a good income, it allowed me to be a mom. So I wasn't ready to quit. But I needed more intellectual stimulation. So I launched a few side projects, and one of them was my newsletter for working moms. Because what I realized after becoming a mom was that every time I spoke to other moms who are doing cool things, I would always wonder, how are you doing this with children? How are you working, and how are you doing all this? And it would fascinate me. So I started interviewing them, and then I started my newsletter. So when I kind of hit a ceiling in my job, I had already built the beginning of a community, and it gave me the encouragement, and it was picking up, and it had a lot of traction, and it gave me the encouragement to actually quit my job and seek, something else as I grow this community.
No, I love
And
that.
then in the same time, I was playing around with AI, because it's I think the first set of jobs that are going to be affected with the AI revolution are communications jobs. Your writing, your strategy, your content, messaging, all of that, because the tools do them so well. So I became very intrigued. And so those two things became my interests. And I said, you know what? I think I have enough to take a leap and give this a shot. So I did. So I resigned. I left my job about 6 months ago now, and I've been kind of doing my own thing ever since.
No, I like that. And so this leap of faith, obviously this show is really about that, right? So you leave this stability in 2023 to pursue this life of, designing your own work. So ultimately, I know you had these two things coming on the side, kind of hit the ceiling there, but ultimately, why did you leave your job? And kind of take us through either a pivotal moment, or maybe it was a series of events that finally said, "Hey, I'm going to go ahead and take this leap."
I think one of the main things was I think so. I was there 10 years. I think at around year 8, I started feeling that, okay, I need to change. My kids had grown up a little bit. I had found my space. I'd kind of learned how to be a mother a little bit. I had my bearings. And I was like, and I started getting an itch to learn more, for more professional development, more personal development. And that was quite limited where I was at. So just to fulfill my own interests, I started doing lots of side courses and lots of things that kept me really stimulated. So I had all of that going on in the background, which gave me a lot of skills to have the courage to quit. Because in these communities and in these courses and in these side things I was doing, I was interacting with a lot of people who had already taken the leap, who were in similar situations as me. And I was seeing their success. I was talking to them about their success. I was watching their stories. I was learning from them. So when I started to be a bit unfulfilled in my job, I found light, like I saw light in the tunnel with all these side things I was doing. And then I think the trigger for me to really quit everything was the lack of flexibility. So suddenly in my job, what used to be a very flexible job, where I really, really managed my own time, it became the exact opposite, which meant I was working much longer hours, which was fine. I don't have an issue working long hours. But it really meant that I was never around for my kids. I could never be present with them. And it didn't really, I wasn't really sure why I was doing that anymore. And I didn't see that changing. So I said, you know what, this is the best time. Because there's never going to be a good time to leave a comfortable job. You're never going to feel ready. You're never going to feel 100% safe. I'm very lucky that, my husband still has a very stable job. So he's obviously a safety net at the moment. And of course, I had savings. Because I had been where I was for 10 years, I got a decent gratuity. So that was again, all these things helped me take the decision. And also I realized that my potential was nowhere close to being used. And that was getting the better of me. And I was like, I'm too young to feel so stagnant in my job.
No,
But I
I
kind of
hear
took
that.
it for a long time because of the flexibility it offered and the income it offered and all of that. But then I reached a point where I think now is the time, because I also feel like the decade between 40 and 50 is, in a sense, a peak decade. You're not that young, but you're also not old,
Right.
and you've got a lot of life experience behind you, but you still have the energy to pursue new things. So I thought it's really now. So yeah,
Yep.
that all that put together, and a lot of encouragement from my husband and family. I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna do this.
No, I love that, and I'm actually approaching that decade myself. So I have very similar thoughts. Like, hey, it's I'm not a spring chicken, but I got a lot of left in the tank, right? So
Yeah.
let's make it go. One of the things I love too about after seeing a lot of your content, you focus on this designing your life, right? And your belief in doing this around emerging tech, I really find fascinating. So, how do you see the intersection of technology and personal life evolving, especially for working moms?
When it's a very interesting question. I think the reason so, I'm intertwining emerging technology with what I want to pursue in redesigning my life is because we're so short of time, I feel. Although I just read a book and it's taught me how to reframe how I think about time, but I'll come
Mm,
back to that.
okay.
Um, I feel that technology like AI and Web3 is going to help us use our time better. So if I can take this on board, so if I want to redesign my life, and I think I like to do a lot of things and I like to achieve a lot of things and I like to work on lots of things at the same time. And I really hope that because of that and because of emerging technology as a tool, it will collapse the time I need to, to succeed or to reach where I want to reach. Because now, thanks to emerging technology, we can do things much faster if we know how to use them. We can get the skills we never had much faster. Like, take an example of just designing something. If I wanted to design something, years ago, I would have had to learn Photoshop or Illustrator or InDesign or all these tools that take time and energy to learn. Now I have Canva and I have ChatGPT and I have all these tools. And the click of a finger, I can get a design or I can get an artwork. I can get you just so I feel that emerging tech is really going to help me design my life the way I want to, because it's going to give me the skills I want much faster, and it's going to help me save time because I can do things faster. But the catch is that you really need to know how to use these tools,
That's the truth.
because I think it's one thing to know that they can help you, but it's another thing to play with them and just have fun and like create. But then it's a totally different thing to actually be able to apply them to tasks that you need to do to optimize them. So I'm learning. I don't know exactly how I'm going to do it, but all I know is that I'm experimenting, and I feel that if I find a way to use these tools to do things better and faster, other moms like me would probably want to know it too. So for simple things like the most basic things, like I used to spend maybe a good hour a week planning meals for the whole week,
Hmm.
and then perhaps an hour a day planning them, making sure they're cooking and having the ingredients and what am I going to grow, and then 4 hours a week grocery shopping or whatever. So a lot of thinking goes into this task, which I don't really need to put my mind to it because I can use my mind for something else. So ChatGPT does my meal plan. I
Mm.
just tell it what I want. It does my meal plan. It tells me what ingredients I need to buy from the grocery. Gives me a checklist. Even sometimes I'm left with ingredients in the fridge. I just ask it, what can I make with these ingredients? It gives me a whole bunch of recipes, macros counted, whatever, gluten free, whatever diet you're on. So I don't have to think about it. So I save time. So
I
what
like
would have
that.
taken me 3 to 4 hours a week will now take me maybe 5 minutes a week in terms of planning and getting that all organized. So I've got those extra 3, 4 hours to do for something else. So that's just a really basic example, but that's why I think emerging tech is going to play a big role in how I'm able to design my life. Because again, I want to do my own thing and I want to work and I want to make money. but I don't want to work 20 hours a day to make the money I want to make. And I don't want to make small money. I want to make money.
Right.
I want to make money that's not pocket change, but that contributes to my family, that allows a certain life, because I've always made money that's contributed to our family. I've never
Yeah.
been in a position where I've not made that money. So I'm just finding ways that I want to be able to do that again on my own.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I feel.
No, that makes sense, and that's a good segue into, we talk about freelancing and income streams, right? And so
Mm.
freelancing while building your own brand was really a smart strategy for you, right? And that you kind of had that foundation initially, but you were doing all these things on the side. So how do you manage the balance between freelancing for income, as you mentioned, but also still focusing on some of those long-term goals that you have?
To be honest, I struggled.
Hmm.
Um, I think what happened was when I quit my job, I think it's, I think when you've always had a solid, stable income, even though you've taken this leap of faith and you know that you're not going to make the same amount of money and you know that you're going to have to put aside making money for a while you're building everything, you're very aware of this, but there's something inherent in you or in me that made me struggle to let go of the fact that I'm not going to be making the same or even equivalent amount of money in the beginning. So what ended up happening is I took on a lot of freelance work. And I think I needed that for my own validation that, oh, look, I've quit my job, but I can still make money. I still have work. I'm still freelancing. And I kind of needed that. But it didn't serve me apart from being able to make an income. It didn't really serve my long-term goals because it again made me put the side hustles stayed the side hustles. Because at the end of the day, you have to if somebody's paying you to do something, you have to prioritize the money because you've committed to it and you're going to get money in exchange for it. You have to do that first. And I had deadlines and all of that. So at the end of last year, I decided that if I really want this to work for me and me not be reliant on freelancing or reliant on somebody else to pay me, I really need to flip it. So I need to focus first on my own business, and my freelancing can come in to cover my costs.
Okay.
So that's kind of where I'm at the moment. So I've flipped it as of January and I'm going full speed ahead with my own projects, which comes with its own challenges and frustrations and ups and
Mhm.
downs and like, being a bit lost. But I'm continuing a small trickle of freelancing so that whatever I'm spending to run my business, I can at least cover that so I'm not dipping into savings. That's kind of where I'm at the moment.
No, and
We'll
I like
see.
that. No, I like that too. And one of the things that I've seen on your page and some of the content as we've gotten to know each other is you mention how you are, building in public, right? And I really resonated with that a lot because even as I think about as I'm continuing to grow the show, when I started the show, like I mean, I'm flying the plane and building it at the same time, right? And so, can you elaborate to us, to audience, you know, how like what does that mean for you and how has it really contributed to your journey to do all the things that you're doing in public?
I think so. As a PR and communications professional, my whole life, I have told other people what to do. This is what your brand is. This is your messaging. This is what you need to say. This is what you need to look like. This is what you say on camera. This is what you do. I am a pro in telling other people what to do. But when I realized, when I flip it and put it to me and tell myself what to do, I'm totally a different, like, I really struggled with it. I really struggled to flip the lens and look at myself and do the same thing I did for my clients and for brands for me. I really struggled. Defining who I am, what is my brand message, what are my values, what is my purpose, all of this, because obviously I'm new in this. I'm still figuring it out. So I struggled with that. And then I also struggled putting myself out there, which I was really surprised because I was like, this is my business. I,
Yeah,
I
it
have
surprises me
coached
too.
everyone. I've coached people my entire life to be on camera. This is what they need to say. Messaging, media training, everything. So why can I not do this? And I realized that I need to stop planning for myself, and I need to stop thinking about it too much. I need to stop worrying so much about who I am and what I'm trying to do and how I'm trying to portray myself and what I'm going to put out there, and just get out there. So when I say building in public is that I'm appearing on camera, not knowing all the answers, not knowing exactly what I'm doing, not knowing exactly what to say. I'm very raw. I make mistakes. There's this saying in public relations. The first thing I learned when I got into PR was perceptions are real, which basically means the way people perceive you is their reality of you, which is why the profession of public relations is managing those perceptions. But I think the world has changed now, and I feel like it's more um, imperfections are real.
I
Because
like
in
that.
this world that's trying to be so perfect, and now AI has come in and everyone's looking great and everyone's got slick videos and they're looking good and they're speaking well and they're getting technology to edit. And I feel like that human connection and that raw vulnerability human is not enough. So what I'm doing is I'm just getting myself out there, and I'm showing my failures. I share my income. I share, what I'm doing that's working, what's not working. I'm not doing it enough because it's very vulnerable to do that. It's almost like, you're just stripping down and saying, look, hey, this is who I am and this is what's happened and this worked and this didn't work. But I do believe that that's what's needed, and it will help build connections because it's real. Um, so I'm just kind of, and also I realized that if I don't do it this way, where I'm kind of, as you said, learning how to fly while flying, I
Hmm.
think that's the nothing's ever going to happen.
Right.
Like, you're never going to be ready. It's never going to be perfect. You know, done is better than good.
Oh yeah.
Progress over perfection.
Oh yeah.
I mean, all of that. So everything, like, I'm thinking of launching my own YouTube channel soon. And I spent hours like looking for microphones and backdrops and equipment. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not doing that. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to use my computer, and I'm going to
Yeah.
show up, and I'm going to see what happens. And people are
Absolutely.
going to see that, and that's fine. And then I will grow with them. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. And let
we'll
me
see.
let me make your microphone journey much easier after this. I'll send you the mic you need. I'll send you the head, like, I got you. I got you. Okay. So
Awesome.
we'll take care of all of that. And I love that too, because that piece around authenticity in people's content is, I think, so needed. I follow a lot of different folks online, and it's not this perfect picture story that everyone is resonating with. They resonate with, to your point, the raw realities of small businesses, solopreneurship, creator life, all of those things. And so, and that's something I probably need to tap into a bit more myself. But you're right. It's like all the things that you're trying to manage when it's just you.
But the thing, also, it's hard.
It
It's
is hard.
hard to
It
show
is.
up
Yeah.
vulnerably. It's really hard because every time I do it, I do feel like, oh my God, I'm going to be judged. What are they going to say? What are people going to
Mm,
think? You can't, half of me says, don't care. Who cares? Right?
right.
But it's harder than it seems. And I'm quite an open person. So
Yeah.
I found it quite surprising that I'm feeling it's hard.
Yeah.
But it is, and I just tell myself not to overthink it and just do it.
No,
And some people will like you, some people won't, and that's okay.
that's okay.
What they say, find your tribe. Your tribe will find you, and
Right.
those are your people. So
No, without a doubt. I want to talk a little bit about your community now too, right? You'd mentioned earlier you talk about the Working Moms newsletter, which I love. One, it plays a large part of your comm strategy, but it's also, like you said, this community. of empowering individuals to pursue some non-traditional careers. So talk to us a little bit about first thing, like really what inspired you to create this community, and how has maintaining this newsletter helped connect you with other working moms?
I think when I became a mom, so becoming a mom has been one of the hardest things ever, right? It's been one of the most rewarding things of my life. And it's just an absolutely incredible experience, but it's hard to parent. It's hard to be a mom, and it's hard to also do multiple other things. So when I became a mom and I started to go back to work, I was constantly seeking other moms for advice, or I wanted to learn from them. Like, how do they do it? How do they manage their child and have this career? How are they managing their time? How will they have time to exercise? What do they do for meal planning? How do they, so many questions. And I started proactively seeking support from other moms. Suddenly, I didn't want to speak to anybody but moms, because I feel like unless you're a mom, you don't know what it's like. You don't know what life is like unless you are a mom, because somebody who doesn't have children's life is very different to somebody who does have children. As you will know yourself, there are things that people who don't have children don't have to think about. So I suddenly I was moving towards, I only wanted to speak to moms, and when I started speaking to moms, I was learning so much from them. And these are moms obviously ahead of me. So they already had kids that were older than mine, and they'd already been mothers a bit longer than me. And I was just constantly inspired by them. And obviously, I was a new mom. So I was still grappling with everything. And I just wanted to learn and find solutions so that I could move on and, you know, get this whole juggling act, get some sort of hold over everything. And I think that I just kept wanting to speak to these moms, and I realized I learned so much from them, and they were so incredible in so many ways, and they changed the way I thought about so many things. I was like, rather than keep all this information with me, maybe I can start a newsletter. Perhaps this can benefit other moms who are, where I was when I became a mom. So I started writing a newsletter, and I wrote it every week. And it's evolved since then. Like before, it was a lot about, how do you manage motherhood and career, and how do you do this, and what is your productivity, and how do you manage your time. I still write about that. I still write about productivity, time management, and parenting. But it's evolved in that I think my audience is very much moms who have career aspirations. So they may not want to be CEOs of companies, but they're quite ambitious in terms of their personal and professional growth. But they also want to still be present moms. So I just write for them, and then it evolved in that I started interviewing them. So I have a series on there called Working Mom Wisdom, where I feature a mom, I interview them, and I talk to them about what are their productivity hacks, what are their parenting hacks, what books do they read with their kids, what shows do they watch, how do they manage their time. And a lot of the moms I interview have also left their jobs to design their own lives, or to be entrepreneurs so that they can design their own lives. So yeah, it's a community of about 800 moms,
Oh, wow.
and I just
Nice.
write on it every week. And now I'm kind of thinking, where do I take it from here? Does it become a more closed door community? Does it? How much of how many of these moms want to learn about AI? So now I'm kind of rethinking the direction of Working Moms Club and how I'm going to actually, provide more value to the moms that are already there. Because what I'm offering, or what I'm interested in offering, is very specific. Like it's productivity, it's parenting, and it's emerging technology. Because I think emerging technology and productivity are very much intertwined. And emerging technology is also very intertwined with work, and will continue to be with the future of work. And we're going to be parents for the rest of our lives, obviously. We're all going to be parents. So you can't really not talk about being a parent. So I feel like those are my content pillars. So it's quite specific. Like I don't talk much about kids that much, although I do address certain issues that bother me or I'm struggling with as a parent trying to do what I'm trying to do.
Right. No, I like that.
So like, for example, now I'm exploring emerging technology, and I'm starting to think about what will this mean for my kids? How do I talk to my kids about emerging technology? They're going to jump into AI and like go way ahead of us much quicker, with the deep fakes and what are they looking at? And anyway, my kids are still small, so I have time to figure this out. But so I would write about that.
Okay. I, I like that. I like that. And when you think about this emerging tech piece, now that kind of blends nicely into the course that you were talking about, right? So I'm really intrigued by this online course that you're creating, not only for your community, but just out there, out on your various platforms. But you create children's books using AI. So how did you come up with this idea? And tell us more about it, obviously too. But uh, what role do you see AI playing in the future of content creation?
I think so. Like I said earlier, AI is going to really take over a lot of the content creation, the mundane work. I feel it's going to take over a lot of the day-to-day annoying, tedious work that we do as communication professionals, as writers, as all of that. So I think where our value will still be is because at the moment AI can't think like us and doesn't have human experience to talk from, apart from what it reads on the internet. I I think it's far away from being emotionally intelligent enough to be able to contribute like a human can. And I think that's where our role will be in the editing of the content and making sure the content is authentic and making sure the content resonates. So you really need to know how to use the tools so that you're not doing the grunt work. You're letting the tools do the grunt work, but you're still using your mind and brain and your experience to package that content or whatever you're producing. And I think one of the first I did many, 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 many courses as I was working on my side hustles. And one of them actually demonstrated how to create a book really quickly. And this was a couple of years ago. And I was amazed at what I could achieve in such little time. So then I said, okay, what can I create that involves writing, that involves images, that involves piecing something together and creating something quickly using emerging tech that I can teach. And then, I thought, why a children's book? Because I'm not a children's book writer. I write. I'm a journalist. I can write fiction, no, nonfiction. I cannot write fiction. It's not my thing. It's not my expertise. So writing a children's book like Dr. Seuss style or something that rhymes or like Beatrix Potter or, Oliver Jefferson, I can't write like that. And I've never really used my brain to write that kind of stuff. So that's when I started using ChatGPT to see like, okay, I'm a writer, so I have the skills of writing. How can ChatGPT help me write this style? And then it did a really good job. And then I went to Midjourney and I said, okay, can I illustrate using Midjourney? And then I played around with it and found that it's actually pretty decent in illustrating. And then I was using Canva I've been using Canva for a while, and it's as if you I'm sure you're familiar with it.
Oh yeah,
It's getting better by the day.
yes it
So I'm
is.
like, okay, so Chat GPT, I can write my book because it's a children's book. It needs to be 8 paragraphs, maybe 2 lines a page, 3 lines a
Hmm.
page, not very much.
Hmm.
That takes 2 minutes on Chat GPT if if you have a vague idea what you want to create. Midjourney, you can create a whole bunch of images in like 20 minutes. Canva allows you to piece it together in 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and that's your book. And now on Kindle Direct Publishing, you can publish it in 5 minutes. And what I thought was that my audience is moms, they already have a lot of pressure to do a lot of things, right? They've got careers and they've got kids and they've got family and they've got probably lots of work. The last thing they want to do is like go home and do like a tutorial on ChatGPT. So I thought, how can I make this fun? So I thought a children's book would be fun. And it's not about creating the book, although it would be fun to do and they can do it with their children. It would also help them in a very short amount of time learn 3 tools: ChatGPT, Midjourney, and how to piece it together in Canva. So if you can make a book, so if you can write and if you can design an image and you can piece it together to create something, you can use those skills to do so many different things.
Right.
So my whole idea for this course was to open your mind on what can be done quickly using AI. And I think that's the challenge when you sit down to use AI. Unless you know what you're using it for, and unless you know how you want to use it, you just sit there just playing with it and just kind of being like, okay, cool. So I kind of wanted to put it into practical use. And then when I found that I could do it in an hour, it was an experiment and I just threw it out there to my audience and I managed to get a good number of signups for the first ones. I said, you know what? Let's run with it.
I like that.
So,
And that could be like a key stepping stone for someone to start designing their own life for the very point that you mentioned, right? Yes, the output will be or could be a book, but to your point around making sure that people are starting to get more comfortable with all these things that are available could be that little nudge that they needed. So I love this kind of dual purpose focus that you have with this course. So kudos to you for that. And clearly, if you got people are so interested, you got a little something there, right? So keep it going.
yeah.
Keep it going for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. You know, one of the sections that I love about the show is really, I always ask my guests about, advice, right? And so one of the things you talked about often is really that balancing of a career and parenting, how common of a struggle that is. So how did really the challenges of being this career driven mom impact your decision, to leave initially, right? And what advice do you have for others who are maybe facing a similar dilemma?
I mean, when it comes to balance, I think the biggest revelation for me was accepting that there is no such thing as balance. And I think once you embrace it, it's much easier to deal with because there are days where I'm so busy and I have so much work, I'm not there enough for my kids. But then there are days where I'm not that busy and I can dedicate a lot more time for my kids. So I don't think it's ever 50-50, and I don't think it ever will be. And I think trying to have a balance, you will never achieve it. So you'll always feel like you're imbalanced. So my biggest tip for balance would be just to embrace the fact that there is no balance. There's going to be days where you're more of a career person, and there are days where you're more of a mom, and that's how it balances out. But everything you do is not going to be balanced. And choosing to do one thing is sacrificing another thing. Anything, if you think about it, every decision is a sacrifice. So if you accept that and then just choose wisely, I think that's helpful. And also I feel like I mentioned earlier in this interview, relooking how you think about time. I always would complain, I don't have enough time. I can't do that. I don't have time. I don't have time. It doesn't feature. I don't have time. I don't have time. And I read this book called The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. Maybe you've heard of it. It's a fantastic book. I highly recommend it. And he basically talks about this concept of Einstein time, where he says, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but basically what he says is time is relative. You are the source of time. So time is what the observer makes it to be. So if you are the source of your time, you can make as much of it as you want, is his whole concept of thinking about time. And that ends up, it boils down to the fact that when you say, I don't have time, it really means I don't want to do it. right now. Because if you wanted to do it, you would have the time. So it really changes the way you think about what you need to do. And I feel like when you're in a career and you're trying to find your way, and then you're trying to be a mom and you have a household to run, etc., etc., I don't have time is the easiest excuse, right? And I think we just have to take that away and realize that we're the source of time. And he also talks about how you can shift the way you think about time by basically never complaining about time. If you shift the way you're thinking about time and stop complaining about it, automatically you'll start prioritizing what you need to prioritize. And suddenly you will have an abundance of time to do whatever you need to do to achieve whatever you want to achieve. And this, for me, as you can see, I've read this very recently, has been like a whole aha moment.
Right, I love
It's
that.
been like, oh my God, so I do have time. I just need to know what I want to use it for. And then everything else is a no. So that's and that applies to everything in your life, I think,
I like that a
especially when
lot.
you're trying to balance or juggle so many different things.
No, without a doubt. I like that. And I think that's good advice for folks. I sometimes think about, a lot of folks ask me sometimes how I have time to like do this and my other job. And it's really about for me like making that time, right? So I hadn't thought
Yeah.
about it as deeply as the gentleman you talk about in the book, but definitely I had to do a reframe myself to now, to your point, I'm interested in a bunch of different things. And there's certain things I've had to like kind of shelf, but knowing what I'm interested in, I need to be able to make time for those things to still also have time for spending time with my wife, spending time with my kids, that type of stuff, doing all this running stuff that I'm doing. So like that's been a good reframe for me. I just make time for stuff and I don't do things that are like, I mean, I don't mind being idle, but I don't like wait, like I don't mindlessly watch TV. I can be doing other stuff, right? So little things like that. But no, I love that reframe, and we'll definitely check out that book. So I've been adding this one piece to this season, which I love. It was a suggestion from actually not a suggestion, but something I stole from another show that has been great because I get a chance for you, the guest, to ask me a question. So, what's one question you have for me about the show, future of work, anything?
Yes, I thought about this a lot and I was like, you know what? I'm going to ask you a fun question more than
Okay,
a work or future of work
cool.
or related question. And my question to you is, if you could invite three people to dinner, whether dead or alive,
Hmm.
who would they be and why would you invite them to dinner?
Oh, that's a good one. Oh man, another show I listen to does this, and I'm always intrigued by it. So three people for me. One, I'm my grandfather on my father's side. I'm very intrigued by him, so I would want to sit down and talk to him. Why? Because I never met him, heard a lot about him. He was a bit of a Rolling Stone, and so just curious about him. Two, that's a good one. I'm a Jordan baby in that I grew up watching MJ play, and obviously he's still alive now, right? And they say you never want to meet your heroes, or not heroes, but meet folks that you looked up to. But I would definitely, given my fandom at the time, and he's alive, I'm alive, I would definitely love to sit down and talk with Mike. So that would be number two. And then three, oh, this is a good one. This may be kind of cliche, but I'm very intrigued about people and their resilience, right? And so the story, like Nelson Mandela's story, is one where, I mean, having hope and determination almost feels like the bare minimum, but for what he went through, and then to still want to make these changes in his life and in the lives of his countrymen, and to do everything that he did despite all of the nonsense that he faced. I mean, I would love to just sit down and talk with him and just hear some of the things like the things that he was thinking about at that time. So I think that would be a fascinating conversation. Three very random guests, but I think as I'm thinking about it right now, those would be two. So I got my grandfather, God rest his soul. So you got someone from Jamaica there, right? Then you got MJ, he's still alive, and then we're bringing in Mandela. So those would be my three. Thank you for that. That's a good one. That's a good one.
You told me you'd like to be put on the spot, so there you go.
I take it. Oh, well, no, without a doubt. That's what I love about this, because I don't know what's coming, right? And so that was a really good one. The dinner guest one. Well, look, Abha, I think this was a really good conversation. I appreciate, all the things that you're doing, trying to do, and your openness throughout this entire process, right? So I'm really glad, one, that we connected. I'm glad that you reached out to me, right? Like you said, you pitched me for being on the show, and I love that. But would love for you to share where our listeners can support some of the work that you're doing.
Yep, I think the best place is, if you're a working mom, is my Working Moms newsletter. It's just workingmomsclub.substack.com. And I also have a website, which is just my name. It's very basic, but it has links to everything I'm doing. So it's a good place. It's just abhanaismith.com. It's just a good place where everything I do, it's in one place. So yeah, I think those two places are a good place to start if you want to see what I'm doing.
All right. Well, thank you for that info. And look, that'll do it for today's episode. Again, I want to thank Abha Malpani-Naismith for joining me today. I'll be sure to share her information in our show notes. And I hope you all have a great week, and we'll definitely see you next time. Abha, thank you again.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks again for listening to Why I Left. Be sure to join us next time for more stories from the Great Resignation. Visit us at www.whyileft.co. That's whyileft.co. And subscribe to the show on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.